Hello fellow YouTubers. Today we're going to be building a fully responsive mock portfolio site using HTML and CSS. We will not be using Bootstrap or Materialize or any other CSS libraries or frameworks. All of the styles will be done by us. This portfolio site is again fully responsive. All of the code will be uploaded on GitHub. Feel free to use it on your own. You can create your own portfolio out of it or use it for whatever you would want. It's free and it's out there for any general public use. As I mentioned, this site is fully responsive, so let's take a look at what we're going to be building today. So here is the main page, our landing page of our portfolio. You can see we've got a top nav bar going on here which can connect to different areas of the site, which is nice. Or you can just scroll down because this is all one single page, but these links do take you to different sections of the site, which is helpful when you're navigating. You'll also notice that when you scroll, the navigation bar follows you down, so at any point you can go back up to the top. I've got links to social media. We've got a project section where you can load your own projects, and then a get in touch section, which is mostly, again, this is all front end. There's nothing on the back end, so this form won't go anywhere. In fact, this button isn't even connected. This is mostly just to kind of demonstrate how the use of forms and more stylings with that. Again, the site is fully responsive, so you will see as I lower it, it arranges itself and certain things disappear. This would be like a cell phone view right here, where you can scroll down. You can see everything is nice and responsive so that you can view it on your cell phone, and everything works well. So without further ado, let's jump into the code and get started with this project. So today we're going to be using Visual Studio Code as our code editor. You can use any editor that you want, really any text editor will do. I recommend Visual Studio Code. They've got a lot of different extensions that help with code writing, that help keep your code clean and looking pretty and give you syntax suggestions and snippets and all kinds of great stuff. It's by far my favorite code editor, but feel free to use whatever you would want. Today I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code just to get going. This is the code for the actual site, but we're going to build it from scratch. So I'm actually going to close this for a minute, and we're going to start off by creating a folder on our desktop. I just named mine My Portfolio. It's got nothing inside of it, as you can see. It is empty. So let's create some files. So first thing that we're going to need is an HTML file. So I just start with a text document and I just rename it. We're going to name it index.html. Yes, we want to rename that. Okay, so we've got our index.html. We're also going to create another folder in here. And this folder is going to be called styles. And inside of our styles folder, we're going to create another file called style CSS. But I'm going to save that because I'm actually going to show you guys how to do that with Visual Studio Code. We're going to minimize this. See, I've got my folder here. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's open up a new our folder. So the folder that we're going to, it is on the desktop. And there it is, My Portfolio. So let's just open up My Portfolio. And what you'll see is that it's going to open up our folder here with the two things that we've already created, a styles folder and our index.html. Inside of our styles folder, we're going to click on this new file, and we're going to say style.css. And this will be our style sheet. And then the other thing that we're going to create is we're going to create another folder, and this folder is going to be image. And I want this to be in my root, not inside the styles folder. Okay, good. Inside of our image folder, I'm actually going to go ahead and pull in the files that I need, the images that I need for the web page. And these images, a couple of them are actual images of me, but the rest of them I got off of a website called pexels.com. And pexels.com, what that is it's actually right here. Let's open up a new tab. It's a free stock photo website. You can go on here and search for photos, and these are all free to use for whatever you want. You can search, you can find images. They're great. They're not They're not copyrighted images, so you can use them for your page. However, as I found out with an application that I made using these free stock photos, I found a I found a new movie on Netflix that used one of the images from Pexels that I used on on one of my applications that I built. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, you might find your photos somewhere else because they are not licensed to any. They're free of licensing, and they're there for the general public to use. So just keep that in mind. But for what we're doing today, it's going to be just fine. So that's where we're getting these images from. But I just went ahead and copied and pasted all of the images that I'm going to use today into this image folder. And again, all of these will be on GitHub. So that being said, let's dive in to some code now. So first thing that we want to do, and this is one of the great things about Visual Studio Code, is we're going to start off our HTML document. And I've got these snippets here, which is an emit abbreviation, which is great because when I click on it, it sets up all of the metadata and everything that I need for the most current HTML5 documents. And it does it for me, so I don't have to type any of this stuff up. But you can see it's got my head, the body, the HTML tags, the doc type, some meta stuff in here, UTF-8, the device width and all that. Let's change our document to my portfolio. That's the title of our web page now. Okay, and now we are ready to get started. So the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to import some of the links to our style sheets and different things that we're going to be using. We're going to be using Font Awesome for some icons, the social media icons that we saw, and we're also going to use Google Fonts to bring in a better font than what comes standard. So coming into here, we're going to start off with Google Fonts. The one that we'll be using today is Montserrat. I like this one. It's a great font, really sleek and modern looking. So we're going to copy this link to the style right here, and we're going to put that into the head of our portfolio, just like that. Okay, so now we have access to this Montserrat font. The next thing we want is Font Awesome. So we're going to go to Font Awesome, and Font Awesome is a great website that gives you icons to use. So we're going to go start using free, and it'll take you here again to link to their CDN so that you can use their fonts. So we're going to come in here, we'll just click the clipboard, it's going to copy it, go back to Visual Studio Code, and we are going to then paste our link in here in the head. Again, you want that in the head. And now that we've got that, the next thing we want to do is link to our own style sheet so that we can use our own CSS. So again, here's another emit abbreviation. I just type link and hit enter, and it sets it up for me. And I'm going to say /, go to our styles folder, and then our style CSS. Okay, great. So now we've got everything set up in our head, and we are ready to begin actually building our website. Now, one of the extensions that I have for Visual Studio Code is Prettier, and that's this guy down here. Prettier, basically every time you save, or the way I have it set up is every time I save, it's going to format my HTML so that it looks pretty. And that's why this body tag kind of went up like that, because there's nothing inside of it. So if I click outside of Visual Studio Code, it's going to save. And oh, it didn't fix it that time. That's fine. That's okay. It kind of gets annoying when it does that, when I'm not done with something. But either way, let's get started. So we've got an empty body tag, and we're going to start building our website. Now, the way that I want to build this website, and the way that you generally want to build your any website that you're building from scratch, is you want to build it in sections at a time, and make sure that everything's styled correctly and is responsive before you move on to the next section. So we're going to start off really easy with the navigation, this header top part up here. It's got some cool CSS styles. Again, it follows you around. It's got links. So let's get cracking on this one. This will probably be the easiest part of it. So let's go to Visual Studio Code, and we're going to create our header. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a div, and we're going to give it an ID of header. And this is another abbreviation. I'm creating a div with an ID header. Inside here, we are going to have an h2 tag, and you can put your name. I'll put my own name, since this is my portfolio. And then we are going to, I'm going to create another div with an ID called links, and this is going to be those nav links that we saw in the beginning. So I'm going to create an unordered list and then a list item, and this is how you can create links like that. So for now, I'm just going to give them a hash, and actually, let's see, we've got 3 of them, so I'm going to hit Control D, and that duplicates the line that you're on. So if I wanted to duplicate 2, I'd just highlight 2 lines. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. Since I only had my cursor on 1 line, it just duplicated the 1 line, but now I've got 3 links, just like that, nice and easy. And we'll call the first one About Me. The second one is going to be Projects, and the last one is going to be Contact. Oops. Contact. Okay, so we've got that done, and that's it for the header for the HTML. So what we're going to do is we're going to save, and I'm going to actually hit Alt-LO, and this is another extension that I have installed here. It's called Live Server, and it lets me view what I've done live. So here is our actual live portfolio. I'm going to get rid of these guys. We don't need them anymore. So here we are. This is what we've done so far. We've got our links, we've got our name, and this is all inside the header. So now to make it look beautiful, we're going to add our style sheets now. So let's go to our CSS. I'm actually going to move it over here, and we're going to add some CSS to our header. So first thing that I always like to do whenever I create a website anywhere is I like to set the margin to 0 and the padding to 0. That kind of just removes some of the default stuff that gets put in there. I like to have a lot more control, so that's kind of how that goes. The other thing that I'm going to do here, since I want to use my Monster Rat font, we're going to just put it here in all. That's what this little star means. It means it's going to go on everything. So it's removing the margin and the padding from everything, and it's making everything have this. So basically, if I want to change my font, I've got to override it, because now it's going to apply this Monster Rat to everything. Okay, so now just to kind of see what this did, let's go back to our portfolio site, and you can see, boom, look at that, the font changed. And everything looks nice and pretty now. I like it. It's much better than the standard font color that we had before. So let's move on with this. I'm actually going to drop this down a little bit. Okay. So moving on. We've got to style our header. So we are going to go ahead and say, give it a hash header. This links to my header tag. The ID, the hash symbol signifies that it's an ID and not a class. And again, this isn't a CSS tutorial. If you want to know more about CSS, I suggest watching like an intro to CSS video. But otherwise, just kind of follow along, and we'll get things done. We're going to give it a padding of 15 pixels. We are going to, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste some stuff and then explain what's going on. So we've got a padding of 15 pixels. Our background color is going to be that gray color. I just named it gray because it's nice. We're giving it a display of flex and a flex wrap of wrap, and I'll go into that in just a moment once I show you what actually happened here. Justify content, that again, this is all Flexbox. Flexbox is what I'm using on the site to make the site responsive. We've got a position of fixed, that way when you scroll it stays in one spot. Width of 100%, so it goes all the way across, and then an opacity of 88, which is just a style thing that I like to add. So let's go ahead and save this and check out what happened to our website. So look at that, just like that, we've got a nice 100%, the colors there, everything looks good. Now what Flexbox does is it allows responsive design, nice and easy. It makes it easy to make your websites responsive, and I'll show you what that is once we kind of style our links a little bit more. So let's go back in here and let's add some style to our links as well. So one thing I like to do is change my cursor to default, because otherwise it gives you this kind of like the cursor that I have right now. It'll do that over any text. So in the header, the H2 tag, where my name is, I like to set it to default so that it stays the arrow rather than turn to there. And you can see the links get this little pointer thing, but now I've got the default arrow when I hover over the text. So I just think I like that a little better. And then for our links, we are going to give them a margin so that they're not pushed out of the view at all. So I'm going to go ahead and to our links, which is this guy right here, we're going to give it a margin right of 20 pixels, and that'll push my links over a little bit, so now you can see they're not pushed out of view here. That's always nice. You want to be able to see your links. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go links ul li. So now we're accessing the unordered list and the list items in that links ID tag. And we're going to say display inline block. And what that does is this is going to make them so that they're all in line rather than vertically aligned. So there you go. Look at that. Boom. Now they're all nice in a straight line. Okay. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add some styles, and it's a lot, so I'm going to copy and paste again and then kind of walk through what each one does. So here, starting from here, I've accessed the A tags in our links, and I'm going to add a padding of 10 pixels so it kind of spreads them out a little bit. Text decoration as none is going to remove the underline that by default gets added to links. Changing the font color to black. I'm adding a bottom border of 0 pixels that is going to be solid and white. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm going to transition that border over 150 milliseconds to this one, which is when you hover over it, you're going to get a 2 pixel solid white border. And then I'm going to increase the padding by 5 pixels as well. And what that does is that adds, when you hover over it, that makes this little thing kind of drop down. And the transition makes it a little smooth too, so that's just kind of adding some nice style to our links here. And so there we go. And now we've got a almost finished navigation bar here at the top. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a media query. Now before we do this, I'm going to give you guys I'm going to throw you a quick bone here. So I mentioned that we're going to be using Flexbox, and that's to help make my portfolio responsive. Now, I'm not going to go into detail. Again, this isn't a Flexbox tutorial, this isn't a CSS tutorial or anything like that. We're just building a site here. But if you want to know more about Flexbox and how it works, I suggest going to this, w3schools.com. They've got information here about Flexbox, and then if you notice, right under Flexbox is media queries, which is what I'm about to explain on this next part as well, because we're going to use media queries which help you to make your website more responsive. So let's get into some media queries here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and here at the bottom I'm going to say at media, and we're going to say only screen. So it can only be a screen, a device with a screen, you know, for whatever devices are out there. It's not going to work on other devices. It has to have a screen, like a phone or a computer or a tablet. And we're going to go minimum width of 480 pixels. That's like a standard phone width. And then inside these curly braces is where we're going to enter in all the styles that we want to have whenever the screen gets smaller than 480 pixels. Yeah, I think it's smaller than 480 pixels. So I've got some styles here. We are going to add to our media query, and this is what's going on here. So in my H2, and I'm accessing my header H2, and then this comma lets me add another thing that I want to apply these same styles to my links, to the actual links tag and the header and the H2. I'm going to put margin auto, and what that does is that just kind of centers it. And then also when you hover over the links, I'm changing the bottom padding to 12 pixels, which is going to make it just when it's smaller. I need less pixels because the border kind of overlaps a little bit. So now, when we go to our portfolio site, when we lower, oops, okay, I know what I did wrong. It needs to be a max width, not a min width. That's my fault. So anything bigger, that's why I was kind of fumbling around with that. Anything bigger than 480 pixels is going to give us that. There we go. So now it's back to normal. So now what you can see is automatically it aligns itself, and that's what that flex wrap does. This flex wrap, where'd it go? There it is. Here we go. Flex wrap allows basically these items to wrap on themselves. So when it's wide enough, they separate out and they actually go to this space between. That's justified content space between. It makes everything go to either side. And then when you do flex wrap, when it gets too close together, and when they're too squished and they don't fit, it wraps and puts underneath it. And then because we're under 480 pixels now, it's centered everything for me. When that's what that media query does. So you can see it's centered right now. When it gets bigger than 480, it goes back out to the edges, and that's what that space between does. So there we go. We've got a fully responsive header, and that is the header. So the next section that we're going to build on is going to be the next part, the big landing spot where we have our name and all that fun stuff. So let's go down here and create another div, and this one we're going to call landing. We're going to go div id landing, and inside here we're going to create another div, and this one I'm going to go with a class. So that's what the dot does. It signifies a class, and we're going to call this one prof card, and that just stands for profile card, because it's going to be like a big card thing that I'm going to add to that. So now we've got profile card, and we're going to add an image, and in our image source we're going to say / access our image folder, and we're going to put in our me2, that's the picture of me, image. Okay, so that's there, and then after the image we're going to go ahead and add another div with a class called info, and this is going to be all the information that goes on the side of the image. So we're going to do an h2, and we're going to put my name again. Again, you want to do your own name or whatever. We're going to put an h4, software developer. We're going to say, I'm going to put an HR, which is a horizontal reference. It's going to put a line under that for me across the screen, which is nice. And then we're going to add a p tag. And inside this p tag, I'm going to add a strong tag, and that kind of just makes whatever you put in here bold. We're going to say skills. Oops. And then I'm going to add a break, so that creates a space. It's like hitting enter. And then I'm going to add some dummy text for now. And another great thing about Visual Studio Code is you can do this lorem, and we'll say lorem 20, and that's going to create 20 lines of some dummy text for us, just like that. Okay, the next thing we'll do under this p tag is we're going to go ahead and add another p tag and another strong tag, and on this one we'll call it social media. And then under this whole thing, that's all that's going in there, we're going to have another div with a class of social links, and this is where we're going to have the links to our social media. So inside here we're going to create an a tag, and inside of our a tag this is when we're going to insert our Font Awesome icon. So I'm going to go back to Font Awesome real quick and kind of walk through how I use this. So we've already linked the CDN to our Font Awesome in there. Now what we do is we go in here and we search the icons, and I've already got them all listed, but I just kind of want to show you. So if I search Facebook, it'll open up all the different Facebook icons that are here. I just use the free version, but you can pay for it and you get a much wider variety of icons to use. But the free ones are good for just kind of what we're doing right now. So I'm going to click on the Facebook icon, and it's going to take me to the Facebook icon page. It's taking a little while to load because I have the video running. And you can see here it's got stuff that you can do. You can edit it, but then if you come up here, you just click, copy it to your clipboard, go back to Visual Studio Code. We're going to insert it inside of our A tag. We want it to be a link, and there we go. That's the end of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste all of them. But again, if you want, you can just do Control D, 4 times or however many times, however many icons you do. And I already kind of know what the other ones are. Like this one, we're going to do like GitHub and YouTube and all this other stuff. But I'm going to copy and paste the ones that I've already created because I've already linked them to my actual social media pages. Just like that. Good. And these these actually are my social media sites. Feel free to follow me if you'd like to. But what I've done here is inside of our A tag in the href, I've put a link that it's basically just the web address to my Facebook, to my LinkedIn, to my YouTube, and to my GitHub. And then after that, I did this target equals _blank. And what that does is that just basically when you click on it, it opens a new window, a new tab, rather than rather than send you back. Oh, and it looks like I closed my live server. So let's go ahead and go back here and Alt-LO to open up the live server again. And you can see I need to add my styles in here, but now here's my GitHub, here's my social media thing. See, look how ugly all this is. This is just the HTML. We gotta add style to this, but you can see already the bar is nice and styled because it's doing exactly what I want it to do. But down here you can see even the links changing as I hover over them, that they actually lead to my social media sites. So that's how we add that in there. So now let's go into Visual Studio Code again and add some style to this section, because that is the end of the landing section. So let's go in here and we'll scroll down to the bottom of our header section here and go into landing. Another thing I like to do is kind of label stuff so that I remember what I'm doing. And to do a comment, you do / star, and then to end it is / star again, and then anything in here is just going to get ignored by the code. So I'm going to say this is my header styles, and then below, let's do that again, / star / we're going to say landing styles. Okay. Now here we're gonna copy and paste some stuff, and I'll kind of walk through what I put in here for the landing. So first thing we'll do is we'll access the actual landing ID tag and add some styles. So landing, first thing we'll do is the background. The background, I'm adding a linear gradient, and this is basically just adding like a dark overlay, so it kind of darkens the image that I do, and then comma, and then the URL that actually links to the image that I have in there. And again, I got the image from pexels.com. Background repeat, no repeat, that's because I just want it to be one time, nothing else. We're going to cover the whole background. I'm giving it a height, a vertical height, 100 vertical height, and what that means is when they load the page, the image is going to cover 100% of the screen at the time that you loaded it. So if it's a small screen, it's going to cover 100% of the small screen. If it's a large screen, it'll cover 100% of the large screen. And then when you scroll, it's not gonna. It's just gonna stick to that 100%. Our padding, we're gonna add 100 pixels, and then space 20 pixels. Now what this does is, the first one says top and bottom is 100 pixels. The second one is saying left and right 20 pixels. So I'm adding some padding to it. Okay, so that's that. The next thing that we're gonna do is gonna be our profile card and our profile card image. And again, I'm going to copy and paste and then kind of walk through some of the code here. So here we go. Our profile card class that we created. Again, I'm going to make it a flex container. So we're doing display flex wrap so that it's already responsive. Justify content center. That's going to put everything right in the middle. And then margin auto, same deal. fact, I might not even need that margin auto. Where I'm giving it a width of 70% so that it doesn't fill, it doesn't go 100%. It kind of centers it in the middle. We're adding a padding again, top and bottom 50%. Or I'm sorry, 50 pixels, and left and right 15 pixels. I'm giving a background color of gray. Border radius is 4 pixels. That makes it so it's not as boxy. It kind of rounds the edges for me. And then box shadow, 4 pixels, 4 pixels, 8 pixels, and black. And that kind of adds a shadow effect to my image, or I'm sorry, to the card, so that it doesn't look flat. It adds some dynamic. It makes your web page look a little more dynamic, and not just kind of flat. And then the profile card image, this is accessing my image. This will take away that gigantic picture of me that we saw that I keep steering away from showing because it's way too detailed up close like that. But the height is going to be 250 pixels. The border radius again is going to be 4 pixels. I kind of like to keep the same border radius as I build a page the same. That way everything looks cohesive. It's themed. It looks nice. And then same thing with the box shadow. The only difference is I do this with Visual Studio Code. You can hover over the color and you can actually use this little picker tool to change the thing. So I kind of just made it a little lighter. Still a really dark gray, but I made it lighter than black. I just like the way it looked. And then when we save that and then go to our profile page, now you can see, boom, this is what it did. It's got a background image. It's a little dark. The card is displayed. It's got 70% of the screen width here. It's in the middle. We've got our icons, everything. It's just everything's lined up nicely. Now the reason that it doesn't look like it did before is because I haven't styled the info part of it yet, which is all this stuff. But so far we're looking pretty good. Like we've got a pretty good looking site going on. So now let's move on to the next part, which is we're going to style that info card. So now again, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste and then walk through what we're doing here. Let's see, social links. Okay, good. All this stuff. Alright, so oops, I'm not inside my landing styles. So let's just go ahead and drag this up here and we'll put it right here. There we go. Okay. And just a little housekeeping. So now down here we're going to add in the info class, and I'm going to make it a width of 60% and give it a padding of 10 pixels. The paragraphs inside the info tags, I'm going to give them a padding on the top and the bottom of 10 pixels, but nothing on the sides. I just kind of wanted to space it out a little bit, give it some room. Our social links is going to be again a flex container, and these are the font icon, the font awesome icons that we put in for all of our social media links. We're going to make them also in a flex container, and display or justify content is going to be spaced evenly. So it's going to take them and space them evenly in a row. And then we'll give them a padding of 10 pixels to space them out a little bit. Now our social links, we're accessing the A tags in there now, and I'm changing the color because by default they make them like a standard blue color, or if you visited them then they're like a purple color. So what I did is I just changed it. I'm changing the color to this light blue color. Again, I'm doing a transition. This time I'm transitioning the color for 200 milliseconds. And what that does is when you hover over it, and that's what this :hover does, we're going to change the color to this Rebecca purple. I just like that color purple. It's better than their standard purple. So when you hover over the links, it's going to turn purple. And then also another thing I added is active. Social links, A tags, and then active. And that means when you click on it, when you're actively clicking down on it, the color will be white. So let's take a look at what that did. Boom, you can see everything moves over to this side now because I've given it a width of 60% rather than just default, so it automatically moved it below because it's in a flex container. Now they're side by side because they fit. And then you can see when you hover over the links, they turn purple. When you click on them, they turn white. We've got padding above and below, so it spaces things out, and everything looks good. And then as we get responsive here, you can see when it gets too small, it automatically, that's that flex wrap, it automatically moves things underneath it so that they all fit together. Now the problem is when we get really small, look at what happened. That doesn't look very good, right? So now to fix that, we're going to actually go to our media query again. and we're going to add some styles in our media query section down here. So I'm going to go and again copy paste some of the styles that I already have. Profile card, info. We'll start with these guys, I guess. Okay, so here we've got our profile card. I'm going to change the width to 90% rather than 70%, so we don't need as much padding on the sides. Same thing here, I changed the padding from, I think it's 100 pixels to 20, because on a smaller phone you don't need all that padding. And then the info, we're going to make it give it a width of 100%, because now it's flex and it's wrapped underneath. We don't need it to have a width of 60%. We want it to take up the whole screen. So just adding those, let's see what happened. So now when we go down, look at that. It looks much better now. It's not squished. It's taking up. You can see the padding all changed. And here, let's kind of burp. You see, look at how much padding there is when it's bigger. And then also you notice the icons down here. When you give it more space to have, it actually spreads out nicely, and everything is nice and responsive. Now the other thing that I want to do, just for style's sake, is you see how it's up here when you're on this About Me section, you've got my name up here and the links, and then my name is right here too. It's kind of redundant. So you know, when it's in big screen or full screen mode, it's nice because it's like, you know, it's at the top, and when I scroll, you know, it goes away. But in here it's kind of part of the card. When it's in cell phone mode, I don't really need that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide that when it gets to cell phone mode. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code, and let's see, links, info, here we go, profile card. Oh, I changed, there it is. Okay, so what we're going to add is info. In our info class, the H2, we're going to put display none, and that's going to basically make the picture disappear. Or I'm sorry, my name is going to disappear when it's under 480 pixels. We're also going to change the image size to 200 pixels rather than, what did I have it at, 250. So we just take a few pixels off to make the image fit a little better and look a little better when we're in cell phone mode. And now you can see the image is a little smaller, the name is gone, and just kind of show you, boom, the image gets bigger, the name comes back, and then when you go under 480 pixels, they go away, and it just kind of makes things look a little bit better for when you're viewing in a cell phone. Okay, and this would be like tablet view. See, everything is nice and responsive, and that's the great thing about Flexbox, is it just does it for you. You know, it makes it nice and easy to make your website real responsive, really easy. And there we go. So good. So this section is done. So we're ready to move on to our projects section, and that section's a little bit easier. There's not as much style going on in the project section. So let's open up our Visual Studio Code again and move right on. So let's go again. We're going to label everything. Just again, this is more for readability for other developers or for yourself, you know, down the road. I used to do this when I was beginning programming, is I'd do all this stuff and I'd be like, yeah, whatever, it's easy, I know my own code, I can remember all this stuff. But then I'd come back in a month and I'd be like, what the heck did I do? And I'd have no clue. I'd just be completely lost. Adding labels and comments really help out. It may seem a little silly at first and a little unnecessary, but trust me, when you are constantly creating new stuff day after day after day, and you come back to look at something you made a few months ago, you'll be completely lost at what's going on unless you put a lot of comments and detailed what you're doing. So this is going to be our projects section, and then in here, find my styles for projects. Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a lot going on, but not too much. So I'm just going to copy all of it, and then we'll walk through it all together. Okay, so projects. I'm accessing our projects tag. Again, I'm doing a flex container because I want it to be responsive. Our flex direction is going to be column. Now what that does is, by default, when you put it in a flex container, it aligns everything horizontally, which is nice because by default HTML does it in a column. So if you do want it to be in a column, you have to change your flex direction to be column. I'm going to add a padding of 100 pixels to give it some space. Our project's H1. That's, oh, you know what? Did I even? No, I didn't do the HTML. Okay, let's do the HTML first, and then I'll come back and walk through all that stuff. Okay, so under our landing, we're gonna come in here. I'm gonna say div, and I forgot what I called it already. I'm just gonna erase this for a second. Okay, so we're going to give it a class. I did a class name for this one. So we're going to say div class of projects. And inside here, we're going to do an h1. We're going to say my projects. Okay. And then under the h1, we're going to add another div with a class of proj. And that's going to be the actual proj. And this is going to, I'm going to duplicate this proj class multiple times because this is going to be the actual individual projects themselves. So we're going to add our image of our project, and in our source we're going to say /image. We'll say photo1. Okay, and then under the image we're going to have div with a class of proj info. And I always do camel case. That's just my preference. You can kind of you could name these classes and whatever you want. These are all names that I've picked out myself. So project info is going to have an h2. We're going to say project number 1 sample project. And this is where you put like the name of your actual project, but we're just creating a dummy one, so it doesn't really matter. And then a paragraph, and I'm going to do this lorem. We'll say 30. Oops. Spelled it lorem. We'll say 35. Give it some dummy text here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add in a break, the br tag that it's like I said, it's adding like a space in between. It's like hitting the enter key, and then I'm gonna have an anchor tag. We're gonna have this go to nothing, and I'm gonna say click. Oops. Click to view. And that will be the end of that. Now, like I said, this is going to be, I'm going to duplicate this whole project class 3 times because I want to have, I'm just going with 3 projects. So I'm going to actually highlight the whole thing and hit Control D once and one more time. So there we go. Now we've got that. And all we're going to do is we're going to go into the second one. We're going to do this project 2. And we're going to say, instead of photo 1, we're going to go photo 2. And then same thing down here. We're going to change project number 1 to project 3. And this won't be photo 1. This will be photo 3. Okay, so now we've got all of the HTML done for our projects section. So not too bad. It is a lot of text because it's repetitive, but that's okay. So HTML is done for that. Let's go back to our style sheet now. So again, now back into here. So now we've got our project H1. This is the actual thing that says my projects. So I've given it a color of that Rebecca purple. Again, I like to use the same colors and the same like border radiuses and all that across the entire project to kind of make things seem cohesive and themed. We've got a bottom border, 2 pixels, solid black, so just a black line underneath it. And then I'm giving it a bottom margin of 50 pixels to just create some space underneath this project's header. And then proj, this is each individual project. We're putting it into a flex container. We're giving it a margin of auto, so it's putting it right in the middle. We're giving it a bottom margin of 40 pixels so that they're spaced out a little bit. And then I'm surrounding the whole thing in a border, a 1 pixel border, solid black, so nice thin black lines to kind of outline them and separate them out. And then because I haven't given it a background color, the default's going to be white, so I'm giving the background color of the individual projects themselves, each card, this really, really, really light gray. Like when I hover over it, you can see it's just off-white gray background, just to kind of distinguish it a little bit. Our project info, this is the text that's gonna the text in the header for our project. I'm giving it a padding of 20 pixels to kind of push it away from the borders. Our project info H2, that's the title of our project, is going to have a bottom border of 4 pixels, double, and then this dark gray color. And what that does is it gives it a double line underneath it, and you'll see that in a second. Giving it a bottom margin of 15 pixels, And then our image, I only want it to be 40% of the flex container. And then this is another Flexbox thing, align self flex start. So that's basically going to take it and push it all the way to the left, or to the right, depending on where I put it. I'm sorry, it's going to be all the way to the left, because the flex start, since it's all going to be aligned horizontally, it's going to start over here on the start of the flex container. If you do flex end, it'll put it over here on the right, which is the end of the flex container. So now we've got all those styles and the HTML done. So let's go back and take a look at our portfolio here. And as we scroll down, we can see our projects. There's that Rebecca purple with the underline, the border. That's that 2-pixel border, and then each one you can see has this real thin border around it. There's that double line I was telling you about underneath the title. It's got the padding around it, so it pushes out in the middle. Our images are only taking up 40% of our container, or 30%, I forget what I did. We've got our A tags here that click to view. They don't take you anywhere, but you can see they all look nice. They're all aligned great. Now, one thing I like to do, this is going to be just for styles. I'm going to move this image to the other side here, and so what we'll do is we'll go back to our HTML, and all that we need to do for that is just to grab this, and I'm just going to cut it. Whoops. Oh, man. Yeah, see, these are all add-ons to it. You know, it closed that tag automatically for me, but I don't need it because I've already got it. So underneath our project info is where we're going to put that image. So now when we go back and look at it, it should automatically save and realign it. Boom, there we go. So now this one's on the other side, so it just kind of looks a little better. You know, it's off center, not everything's all on one side. Great, so that's done. Looks nice. We've got that. Okay, so now we're well on our way. Now let's check this out though. So now, like I said, each section you want to check and make sure you want to style it, and you want to make sure it's responsive before you move on. So let's see what happens when I close this. Okay, everything. Okay, that looks really ugly. Here's not so bad. You can see my images are already responsive because I put them at a percentage, so it stays that percentage the whole time. So the smaller this gets, the smaller the image gets, because it holds that 40%. But when I get here to cell phone view, look at how ugly this is. I mean, the image, you can barely see it. The text is like sticking out of the side. These things are all weird. So we're going to go ahead and fix that with our media query again. So we'll go down here to our media query. Here it is. And down at the bottom, I'm going to add the styles that are going to basically make that look pretty for us. So let me find that real quick. Okay, so profile, projects, here we go. Project. Alright, so down here, again, I'm going to copy and paste the code that I already have. So right here, profile, projects. Okay, so projects, I'm going to reduce the padding to 20 pixels rather than that 100, because again, on a smaller screen, you don't need that much padding. The project cards themselves, I'm going to make them a width of 100%. I believe I had them at like 70 or something before. And then I'm also going to add that wrap to them, because before, if I added the wrap, it kind of aligns everything funny and it just doesn't look right. But here in the smaller view, I do want it to wrap underneath it. Now this we haven't actually added to our HTML yet, and I'll explain this in a minute. But then our project image as well, we're going to give it a width of 100% and then center it, because at that point we don't want it to be that 40% of the container. We want it to take up the entire container and be centered so that it looks nice. So let's go ahead and see what this did to our portfolio site. Oh, look at that. So now that looks much better. So the image is 100% of the container now. It wrapped the text underneath the image rather than be squished up against the side of it. And then, yeah, everything's aligned nicely. The padding isn't too crazy, and it looks really good. That's what we want. Now here's what the other tag was. Where'd it go? Right here. This project 2 with 100% wrap reverse. Now this is just another style thing, because I noticed, and you guys probably noticed it too, but each one has the picture on top and then the words underneath, and that looks really good. This one is still flipped, and that's because in our HTML we have it flipped. You know, all the other ones, the image is on top, the text is on the bottom. On project 2, the text is on top and the image is on bottom. So in here, we're going to add another class. We're going to say proj2. So now what this does is it adds another class called project2 in addition to the class project that's already on there. And project2, right here, I'm going to say, well, I don't need this because it's already getting the width of 100% from project, but the flex wrap, we're going to have it be wrap reverse. And what that does is it takes the elements, and in this case the two elements that are inside proj2 is going to be this div and this image, and when it wraps them it's going to flip their positions so that the image will be on top and the text will be on the bottom. So now when I go back here, once it saves, oops, did we add the, let's see, you know what, let me just add that back, Control Z. Let's see what happened. Let's reload it. Sometimes it caches. There we go, yeah. It was just the cache. Okay, so now you can see that the image is on top just like all the other ones, because this one is getting reverse wrapped, and then when you pull it out, it goes right back to the way that it was that we set it up, or it's the only one that's inverted. But then when you go to cell phone view, it lines it up just like the other ones. So great, now we've got a fully responsive project section as well. We're getting there. We've only got 2 sections left and they're relatively easy, so let's move right along. We've got our projects, we've got our landing page, we've got our header, everything is nicely styled, it looks good. We've just got a couple more sections to go. So back to Visual Studio Code, and let's build our contacts section. Here we go, contacts. Oops. Oh wait, let's again comment it so that we know what's going on here. Whoops. So, contacts. Alright, and I don't think I'm being consistent with this stuff. I think it's projects styles and then contacts styles. I like to be consistent. Okay. So now for our contacts styles, I'm just going to copy and paste because we're going to try to kind of move things along here. Okay, and then let's write the HTML and then come back and explain those styles. So down here underneath, you want to make sure we're on the right spot. So you can, another great thing in Visual Studio Code is you just click, so it highlights div here, your projects div. You can scroll down now and you can see where it ends. So we want to go under this projects div, and we're going to create another div called contact, and we're going to give it an ID of contact. So div ID contact, and you know, it's not really important whether it's an ID or a class. Generally IDs you only want to use them once. Class is something that you can use multiple times, like this one, class proj. I've given it to these 3 different divs. You didn't want that to be an ID because it would apply the style to the first one, and the other 2 would kind of be left hung out to dry. Class allows you to use it multiple times and reuse it. So if you know you're going to use a container only once, there's not going to be another one named contact, you can give it an ID. It's a little bit cleaner to do it that way. Okay, so anyways, contact, in here we're going to have another div with a class called form, and inside our form, surprise, surprise, we're going to have a form, but first we're going to have an h1 as a label. So let's do h1, so get in touch, if I could spell, and then we're going to have a form, and again I just do form enter and it creates the form tag for me. I'm not going to have any action because we're not actually sending the form anywhere, so that doesn't really matter. And then inside the form we're going to have a label, and this is going to be for the name, and we're going to call it name. And then under the label we'll have our input. That's going to be typed text, and the name of it is going to be name. Okay, and that's that one. Then we're going to have another label. Actually, you know what? Here, I'll just show you right here. So if I highlight 2 lines, Control D, it creates the same 2 again. But instead of name, we're going to have email. And this will be email as well. And the type, I'm going to do email as well. You could leave it as text, but if you put in type email, then HTML already has built-in validations for the email on the front end, so it just kind of adds some extra stuff. The name of it's going to be email, and this would all be for like these names and types and all this. Well, types is not, but the name, this is more for back-end stuff, which again, we're not doing the back-end, but it's just good practice to get used to it now. And then down here we'll have the message. This is going to be for message. And then, but instead of having it as an input, we're going to do a text area. And this is going to be, name is going to be message. And there we go. Okay. And then under here, we're going to have a button. And for the type of button, we're going to make it a button. You can have submit, and that'll submit all of this form data to the form. And whatever action you have, this again is all back-end stuff, but for right now we're just going to have the button, because when we click on it we don't want it to do anything. And we're going to say send. And now another thing that I did is I added another font awesome icon, which I'm just going to copy and paste it. But if you wanted to, you search it. I believe paper is what I looked for. Yeah, paper for paper plane. So I put this icon right here inside the button right next to send, and that'll go ahead and add that paper airplane icon after the word send. Okay, so that's our form. Now under the div, which is the form div, it's got the label, get in touch, and then the form. Under that we are going to add the image, which is the picture of me again. I have so many pictures of me. I'm going to go to our image folder, and I think it was board. Yeah, because it's me pointing at a board. Actually, it's pointing at a screen. I'm actually presenting a project that I did in that picture. I just liked it. It's a nice looking picture. It shows me in action. It shows me working. So you want to select smart photos for your portfolio. And before we move on, I'm actually just going to finish the HTML because there's only one more line that we're going to do, and that's underneath this last div, which is the contact form div, or the contact section. We're going to add a footer. And this one I'm actually going to use the footer tag. I could have used the header tag up above, but I like divs. They're easier and they just, everything kind of fits. But they actually have header and footer tags for HTML, which are helpful. So I'm going to create a footer tag down here for my footer. I'm going to put it inside of a paragraph, and I'm going to do this ampersand copy. And see, here it is right here. What this does is that creates the copyright symbol for you. And then I'll say 2019. Add this little thing here, and then I'm going to put in a Villa Media Group. You can put in whatever you want, but that's just me. Okay, and that's it. That's the end of the HTML. This is everything. This is our portfolio site right here. So now we'll add. I'll go through our styles for our contact. We'll add some styles to our footer. Make sure everything's responsive, and then we're all done. Well, the only thing left would be to connect some links, which I'll show you at the very end. But let's finish up and be done. So our contact, again, it's a flex container. We're spacing everything evenly, so it's going to be nice and spaced right in the center, evenly. Our padding is 50 pixels on the top, bottom, left, and right, so give it some space around. And then a background color, I gave it a darker gray than the other ones, because just kind of offset the different grays that we're using. Our contact H1, which is the label above the form, is going to have a bottom margin of 50 pixels, and this blue color. Again, this is the same blue color that we're using up above for our social media links and other things. I like to kind of keep that theme going. Our contact form, I actually take the form itself and give it a flex container, because I just kind of do this in general with my forms, but I do flex direction column, and that kind of lines up everything vertically from top to bottom. And then inside our contact form, I'm accessing the inputs and the text area fields, and I'm giving them a padding of 10 pixels, so just kind of giving it a little bit of space. Border radius of 10 pixels. I gave it a different border radius than some of the boxes because this is an input form, so I wanted it to just look a little bit different. I'm adding a bottom margin of 5 pixels just to kind of space out the input forms, the input fields, and then outline none. What this is HTML, when you add your forms in, it automatically, or I think it's a Chrome thing actually, Google Chrome, the browser that I'm using, when you click on it, it gives it like a blue outline on it. And that's nice for like links and buttons and things, because it lets you know when you've clicked on something, so you don't click on it more than once. and like send the information multiple times. It lets you know that you actually clicked on it. But to access for my forms, I don't need that. It just kind of, I don't like the way it looks, so I take that out by doing outline none. And then our button, this is our form button here. I got lots of styles on my form button here. The width is fit content, so it's going to make it basically as wide as the stuff that's inside the button itself, which is basically the text and the font awesome icon. Our padding is 10 pixels on the top and the bottom, 20 pixels on the left and the right, and that just kind of makes it a nice like jelly bean shaped button. Our border radius is 10 pixels, and that's to match the border radius of the inputs. Those I do want to be the same because I want them to kind of be cohesive. Our margin auto will center the button right in the middle of the form itself. And then we've got a margin top under the margin auto, because if I put this up on top, this margin auto will override this top margin. But this top won't override this margin. So I can actually have margin auto and then margin top of 5 pixels to kind of push it off of the text area box that it's under. I'm changing the font size to 14 points just to make it a little bigger. I changed the cursor to pointer because by default it just keeps it at the default arrow. This will change it to the little finger pointer guy when you're hovering over the button, which I just think looks nice. The background color of the button is going to be that same blue color that we always had. I take away the border of the button. This is just my preference of style, especially if you're changing the background color. You either have to change the border colors yourself or take away the border, because it's going to have a default gray color, because that's what color the button is by default, is gray. So if you change the background color of the button, the borders will stay the same. So I removed them. I also removed the outline again, same thing that I did up above. And now I'm adding a box shadow, and again that adds like a shadow effect, so it kind of looks like the button is hovering above the page itself. And then here's the transition again. So when something happens, I'm going to be changing the box shadow, changing the background color, and changing the color, all by 150 milliseconds, because I want them all to change at the same time. And here's what the changes will be. So active, when you're clicking on the button, we're transitioning from this box shadow to no box shadow. And I'll show you what that is in a moment. We're also changing the background color. All that I did here was just kind of make that same blue, but I made it a little darker. So you can see this one's up at the top, and this one kind of goes down a little bit, makes it a little bit darker of a blue color. And then the color of the text itself, rather than be black, it's like a lighter gray color than the black. So all those things, this is all just kind of styles that I've played around with over time. And then our contact image, the image itself, I'm going to make it 500 pixels rather than have a gigantic image there. Border radius is 4 pixels, and that's to go in line with all the other border radiuses that I've done throughout the entire portfolio page. And then we have that box shadow again to just kind of make it look like it's lifted off the page a little bit and not just flat laying on there. Add a little bit of dynamics. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like now. So now here we go, get in touch. Okay, oh, there we go, now it's saved. Alright, get in touch, here's our form. As I mentioned, it's got all of our labels, the name, email, message, the input forms. Okay, go away. The text area box, here's that button that we made. You can see the border's gone. It's got this shadow along the outside of it, and there's that box shadow again on the image, and you can see that just kind of adds dynamic to it. It makes it not look just straight flat. And then when you click on the button, this is what that transition does. It's got the pointer, but the transition, when I push it down, see how it looks like it's faded and the box shadow goes away? It actually kind of gives the illusion that you're pushing a button down, and I've always been a fan of that. And then you can see our HTML for the footer is down here at the bottom, and right at the bottom of the screen. It's got the copyright 2019 of Villa Media Group in this footer, and we'll add styles to that in a moment. So now let's see what happens. Again, we want to move section by section. Let's see what it is responsively. Ugh. Yikes, that is terrible looking. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's fix that. Back to our media query when we're in cell phone mode, which is a max width of 480 pixels. Down here at the bottom, let's add some more styles to make this look nice. So the last one. Wow, is that really all I did? So it looks like I did an easy fix here. All I do is access the contact image and put it at display none. So I just hide the image when we're in cell phone mode, because when we're in cell phone mode, we really don't need that image to be there. So now when we save, boom, look at that, done. So you can see When it's more than a 480 pixels, I've got the picture there. When it gets too small, the picture goes away. So now it's fully responsive. You can see everything nicely. Our footer's here at the bottom. It's great. In fact, let me just lift this up a little bit. There we go. There's my footer here at the bottom. Okay, so now the last thing we're going to do is just add style to the footer, and then we're done. And we just add. I'll show you guys how to link to different parts of the site, so we can actually click around and it'll look cool. Let's go down here underneath our contact form and say footer styles. And there's just a couple things that I did just to kind of make it look nice. So here's our footer tag. I added a padding of 10 pixels and a background color of that same gray, same as the navigation bar, so that they match. The footer paragraph, I'm giving it a fit content margin left auto. So what that'll do is it'll push it all the way to the right side, which is kind of funny. That's always counterintuitive to me. But it automatically pushes it all the way over here to the right side. And then font weight bold, just make it a little bigger and easier to see rather than that tiny little text that we have. So now let's take a look. There we go. There's a nice looking footer. It got pushed over here to the right. The text is bold. The background color's there. You don't really need to worry about being responsive with the footer, because that should, unless you've got a lot of stuff down there, it should be okay. But now you can see we've got everything we need. It looks nice. Everything's cool. We're looking good. We've got a fully responsive portfolio now. Alright, so the last thing that I'm going to show you here is how to make these links actually work. This is just a static web page. You know, if you were to build this with like Angular or something, you'd want Angular routing, and that gets a lot more complicated than what I'm about to show you right now. But yeah, so let's do a quick fix on that. So up here at the top where we have our links, instead of just having it be like this, I'm going to say hashtag projects and then hashtag contact. Now what this does is when you have this hash and then the word after it, it's going to look for an A tag, an anchor tag that has the word that is labeled with an ID of contact or an ID of project. So what we'll just do is we'll go over here and right above our div class for projects, I'm going to add an anchor tag, and we'll get rid of the href because we're not actually sending it anywhere. I'm going to say ID, ID of projects. You want to make sure you name it the same thing that you named it above, because this is what it's going to be linking to, is this section of the HTML. And then same thing down here, right above contact, we're going to add an anchor tag. Get rid of the href and give it an ID of contact. Whoops. I think I named it contact, right? Contact. Good. Okay. So now, what that does, once it saves and refreshes, there we go. So now when we click on these links up here, it'll take me to the project section or the contact section. And then about me, because we didn't add anything, whenever the hash is there, it just takes you to the top of the page. And since this is the about me, I didn't feel it necessary to change that. But now you can click around on your site, and it's nice, it's fully responsive, it's styled well, everything looks good. You can click around on here too, and it'll take you to the different spots. That's nice. And that's it. That's the entire portfolio site. Again, all of this is linked to GitHub. Thank you guys for watching. I know this video is a little bit long, but it's fun doing this kind of stuff. So if you really enjoyed it, click the like button. Give me some love. Show me some support. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be uploading much more videos like this one, doing some tutorial videos too, maybe with some CSS and HTML, and maybe start getting into like jQuery and JavaScript and stuff, and making more user-friendly and fun things as well. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.